Welcome to this week's episode of the Savvy Flipper Show. I'm your host and business strategist, Clara Rose, and this is Larry Vanderhoof, our reserve analyst and project manager.
Good afternoon.
We are back again. How exciting.
Back again.
Back again. Thank you for joining us once again. We always appreciate that you guys show up each week for us. Today, we're going to do something different. First, if you're brand new, we just want to put this out there. Normally, we're talking about 3 topics. It's all about being a savvy flipper, but our 3 topics cover the things that are important to help you be a savvy flipper: protecting your assets, avoiding common mistakes that newbies or not so newbies make, and then, of course, maximizing your profits. And then we say that it's easy as 1, 2, 3. We call it flipping by the numbers. Now, today, we're going to do something a little bit different, and actually the next few weeks, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today, we're going to kind of just spell it out for you. So we're going to cover some topics that really go beyond the flipping basics. So I'm talking about beyond the single-family home residential flip.
Right. Teaches things that you didn't know that you didn't know.
That you didn't know that you did. And you might not want to know, but we're going to teach you anyway.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to share today can be very, very helpful and handy to a lot of people because not everybody just flips single-family residential houses. Sometimes they get into commercial properties and vacation properties and things like that. So those are some of the topics that we're going to hit on and tell you some of the important things that you need to know about those.
Beyond the flipping basics.
Correct.
That's what we're here to talk about today. Okay, so you may or may not know, as watchers of our show, that we own ARC Property Group, and we offer services for not just flippers, but for flippers, people who are in real estate investors, or people who are managing properties, sometimes for people who manage resorts. So a variety of different customers or clients that our company serves. It just so happens that flippers or real estate investors are some of those people.
Correct.
But I think that it's really important that you understand that beyond just the basics, there's more. There's more. It's great if you're flipping single-family homes.
Right.
Right? I think you could be making great money doing it, but there's more.
What if you decide to buy a commercial property?
What if
you decide to take that single-family residence and use it as a vacation property? There are things that a lot of people don't realize that are requirements, federal requirements and whatnot, that we're going to touch on a little bit today, but go into more detail as the weeks go on, and stick around. I think you'll be surprised.
Yep, good stuff coming. All right, so let's dive into the first one today. We're just going to talk about the basics of each one of these, and then as the weeks roll out, we'll take each one and we'll go into depth with them.
Correct.
Okay, so just a cursory basics today. Let's start with project management.
Right. Now, project management, we touched on in some detail in previous shows because it really comes into play with single-family flips, that type of thing, whether you're going to do it yourself, whether you're going to hire it out to have somebody do it, because let's face it, some people have to keep their jobs while they're doing this, or they just don't have the time for it, so they will hire it out. So project management is fairly important in any aspect of real estate development.
And definitely something that we cover because we talk about maximizing your profits.
Right.
And that's one of those places where you can really maximize your profits or really lose your shirt.
It'll make you or break you, correct.
It can make you or break you.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more in depth about property management. So if you're a single-family home flipper, of course, we can help you because we can manage. If you're in Florida, we can help you manage those projects. But if you're wanting to step out into something a little bit larger, something a little bit bigger, now it really becomes important. Project management really becomes important.
Right.
Talking commercial, multifamily.
Right. And it's always good to have that person on your team that has your best interest in mind. The general contractor, for the most part, in commercial properties, they know their stuff, they know what they're doing and whatnot. But still, it's good to have your own set of eyes and ears on site that can keep control of the reins and make sure that things move along smoothly and your interests are being taken care of.
Right. So that's really what it's about, is
Right.
your interests are being taken care of.
Right.
Now, as a flipper, you might not have the knowledge, you might not have the time, you might not have the desire,
Right.
right,
Right.
to manage a project. And so that's one thing. But sometimes even homeowners, right, who are doing a project, they want someone to come in and manage their project, which is another thing that we offer. It's really about having an advocate,
Correct.
right, that's
Yeah.
on your side,
Yeah.
that can help you if things don't go as smoothly as they ought
Right.
with your contractors and subcontractors.
Sure, sure. Contractors are in it to make money just like you're in it to make money. And unfortunately, sometimes situations come up where they may make a decision, not a terrible decision, but a decision nonetheless that will affect your bottom line as well as theirs. And you can bet if one of you are going to lose money on that decision, it's probably going to be you, unless you have somebody there that's got your back and say, no, we need to take this to the homeowner. We need to find out what their opinion is and then move forward from there.
Right, because we're really the boss, right? Ultimately, you're the boss.
Right.
You're in control. So when you have a project manager, that just helps you to keep a tighter rein on things. Plus, you want to bring that person in the beginning, right? Don't have a contract with a contractor already in place and then hire someone to come in and manage the project.
Right.
Bring that project management person in right up front. Then they can also help you with those contracts, making sure that you're signing contracts that protect you as well,
Right.
and protects you against overages and all sorts of things.
Right. And a contractor will know that, you're a serious business person if you have a project manager who's going to watch over the project for you. It takes a lot of the guesswork out for you. You can kind of kick back and relax a little bit and know that things are getting done the way that they should be.
It takes some of the pressure off you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
All
that's
right.
project management.
That's project management. Let's move on to the next one that we'll go into depth further in the future, but for today. So the next one is reserve analysis or reserve study. Now, you may not know what that means. A reserve analysis or reserve study is a study on future capital expenditures for common interest developments. What does that mean?
Correct. Well, this is a subject that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I've spent many, many years doing reserve analysis for some of the largest timeshare resorts in the country, as well as some smaller mom and pop type places. And this just simply means, as a reserve specialist, you go around the particular property and you look at everything that has what they consider a useful life. And a useful life just simply means how long will that particular object or whatever the case may be, how long will it last from the time that it's installed, let's just say AC unit, from the time it's installed to the time that they give it a average useful life. And so that goes into a report, and you do that with every single product or machine or component or what have you on the entire property, from the roof to the ground on this entire property, inside and out. And you have to put a useful life on it. If it's got a 10-year useful life and it's 5 years old, it's got 5 years left on it. What's it going to cost to replace that? And then you break that down over the remaining 5 years. That kind of gives you what they should be setting aside annually to replace this particular component when it comes time to replace it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of mathematics. It's a lot of calculations. The reports typically run anywhere from 75 pages to, we've done some that have been as much as 350 pages long. So they're fairly in-depth, but they're extremely, extremely important on common interest properties. and we can get into that in more detail in the shows coming up. But I will tell you that if you happen to be considering buying a condo to flip it, or maybe you live in a condo already, the last thing you want is somebody knocking on your door and saying, hey, we got to hit you with a special assessment because this particular property doesn't take in reserves. There's not a monthly reserve that you're paying into, so our $130,000 roof needs to be replaced, so you need to cough up $7,000. Not a good thing. So that's where the reserve studies come in. That's where the reserve analyst comes in, because once that report is done, they can tell the board members exactly what it is each individual living on the property needs to be contributing to in that reserve.
On a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis, correct.
So instead of getting
It's insurance, bottom line.
yeah, instead of getting a knock at the door, oh, we need $7,000 for the roof, it's built into the monthly ongoing plan.
Right.
So everyone pays $100 a month or $200 a month every month,
Right.
goes into the reserves
Right.
for when those future capital expenditures
Yeah.
are going to need to be replaced or repaired.
Yeah, and you want to just keep in mind that that's over and above the normal monthly dues for
Maintenance
keeping the
stuff,
pool
yeah.
right, keeping the pool clean, and those types of things. This is over and above that. This is for future expenditures. Things that are currently working and in good condition, but will eventually wear out.
Because everything does.
Right.
Every component eventually wears out.
Right, right.
They only have so much of a useful life. That doesn't mean that because it has a 10-year useful life that you're not going to get 15 years out of it.
Absolutely
You
not.
might, but
Absolutely.
you might not.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, AC units is a perfect example of that. AC units typically have about a 15-year useful life, but it depends on where you live. If you live on the East Coast or the West Coast near the salt water, your useful life is diminished. If you live in the Midwest or someplace like that, then the useful lives have a tendency to expand. You live in Florida where it's hot all the time and these things are running 90% of the time or more, your useful life might not be quite that long. So it's just kind of figuring out where you're at, and that's why you hire a reserve specialist to come in and look at those things rather than a board member or somebody, the maintenance staff or something, trying to guess.
Right.
You have a professionally done report.
And that's important if you're considering as a flipper buying a condo for that purpose. Ask to see the reserves.
Absolutely.
Ask to see their reserve study. Ask to see what they've put away for future capital expenditures. Because you could buy, and then you're in the middle of a flip, and 30 days later, you get a special assessment for $20,000 because they haven't properly reserved. You're an owner.
Yeah.
Once you sign on the dotted line, you're an owner, and you are just as responsible. So just if you're considering it or you are buying condos, you don't want to miss the episode we do on reserve studies, for sure, for sure.
Right.
Okay, before we run out of time, let's get to the rest of them. All right, next, we are going to talk about property condition assessments. Now, a property condition assessment might sound a little bit like a reserve study, but it isn't. It's not about future capital expenditures. It's about what does the property look like right now? It's a snapshot of the condition of the property right now, or the moment that the analyst comes in and does the assessment. So who might want a property condition assessment?
Most anybody that's considering purchasing a commercial property, which is the most common use of a property condition assessment. And the condition assessment is really kind of a cross between a reserve study, because you're looking at the condition of each unit, and a home inspection, if you will. You're inspecting the property, again, to see the kind of condition. But you're not telling them what it's going to cost to replace this or repair this, and you're not doing it for saying that this needs to be taken care of, this needs to be fixed or anything like that. All you're doing is sharing the information that you discover about that particular property with the individual who hired you because they're considering buying this property. You're telling them, okay, the roof is this old. You're telling them the AC units are this old. You're telling them the carpet throughout the hallways and things are 15 years old and getting wore out. That's all you need to do. Then it's up to them what they want to do with that information, whether they want to strip out the carpet and replace it, whether they want to redo the roof, whatever the case may be. You're really gathering information about the condition of the property as it sits right now.
And it's really more important for larger commercial, like multifamily homes or commercial properties, restaurants, anything that somebody's going to be investing a large amount of money in. It just makes good sense to have someone come in and look at all the stuff that you're not going to see.
Right.
You can walk through a property and go, hey, this looks pretty good. And then the day that you buy it, walk through and go, oh, gosh, I never noticed that. Or right? Plus, the specialist is going to go and look at functional components. Right? Going to go check out the boilers and the hot water heaters and I can't even count the number of basements we've crawled through over the years looking at, getting boiler numbers and
on
so
top
we could
of 50-story high-rises in downtown. Yeah.
So you're not going to do that as a potential buyer. So you hire somebody to go in and say, before you lay down your millions of dollars or whatever you're thinking of spending, even $700,000 or $800,000, that's a chunk of money, right? So get a professional to come in and say, here's the condition of the property. Before you make the purchase, here's what you need to know. So you can account for those things that you might not necessarily have known or seen.
Yeah, and most condition assessments are done on commercial properties. So again, if you are a real estate investor and you're looking at a commercial property, whether it's a mom and pop type of a little restaurant or whether it's a warehouse or what have you, size really doesn't matter when it comes to condition assessments. You just need to get somebody, a fresh set of eyes in there to tell you, here's what I seen. And then that's when you take your offer to the table, not before.
And it's a negotiating tool as well. Like, okay, we're clearly going to need to do something with the roof on this commercial property, or we're clearly going to need to change out the AC or something that is going to be a larger ticket item. You can use that as a negotiating tool, or you could use it as a I'm out tool, right? Oh, okay, yeah. The foundation has got this massive crack in it. We're not interested, right? So good information. It's really all it is information.
That's it.
And then what you do as an investor, what you do with that information is 100% up to you. But getting that information is the important part.
Yeah, and just so that everybody understands, it might sound a lot like a home inspection. The difference is most of the time when you're financing a property, a real estate property, whether it's a residential house or what have you, an inspection typically is required. A condition assessment is not required. A condition assessment, again, as we stated before, is simply information that you're giving to the person who is considering purchasing this property.
Right, an independent, unbiased opinion of what the actual condition of the property. Okay, before we run out of time, let's get on to our next one. Okay, let's talk about ADA compliance reports. Now, ADA compliance reports are not something that the average just residential flipper probably has heard of. But if you have dabbled at all in rentals or timeshares or commercial property, you have likely heard about ADA compliance. So talk with us about ADA compliance reports.
Well, ADA compliance is another one that's near and dear to my heart because we've done hundreds of ADA compliance reports all across the country, again, typically in timeshare resorts and common interest properties, simply because anybody can rent a timeshare unit, a vacation property unit, or whatever. And if that person is handicapped in any way, whether it's blind or whether they're in a wheelchair or what have you, they have to have a certain percentage of their total units ADA compliant, meaning the doorways have to be a specific width, the bathrooms have to have a certain turn radius in them, the light switches have to be at a certain height, and there's a whole list of ADA compliant issues that have to be followed if you are a a common interest type of a property. Not only that, but it comes into play if you happen to be a big-time investor and you're going to invest in a big restaurant. Absolutely, you need to make sure that you fall under the ADA compliance guidelines, because if you don't, you could be looking at some serious fines. The Department of Justice gets a little sticky about that kind of stuff. So and again, we'll go into detail, and out of all the subjects that we're going to cover, there's probably more information on this individual subject than any of the rest of them. But it's just important that we all understand the importance of ADA compliance anytime you're operating a business or a property that is open to the public.
Yep.
This even means, this even goes out there to business owners that own a building and their employees work in that building. That building has got to be ADA compliant. So there are a lot of things to cover in this particular subject.
Yeah, we'll go into depth for sure on that. But today we'll just suffice it to say, if you are considering commercial property where people, the public, general public, comes in any capacity, you need to be ADA compliant.
Correct.
You don't want to be that business owner who had a guest in their place of business who perhaps used a wheelchair for mobility, couldn't get into the restroom, and it caused them great embarrassment. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be on the receiving end of that fine. They will get an attorney for sure, and the attorney will reach out to the Department of Justice, and the inspector will come, and there will be a massive fine. And for some businesses, a $30,000 or $50,000 hit will totally put them out of business, put them under. So protect your assets, protect yourself, be smart.
Yeah, it's just a good thing for everybody, everybody concerned, the ADA community, as well as you and I as business owners.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We have those are the things that we're going to talk about in depth in the coming weeks on the show. I wanted to just give you a really quick recap of what we talked about before we move on. Reserve studies, project management, ADA compliance reports, and property condition assessments.
Correct.
So those are the things that we're going to go in depth over the next few weeks. So you will want to be tuning in every week to see what we're covering. If you're going to go into commercial property, this is for you. Okay, before we wrap up, we don't have a tool today, but I do have a business savvy for you, and that falls under the work smarter, not harder. And I want to talk with you about a new tool that I have found. If you know me, you know I'm kind of a tool nut. I
didn't say anything.
He didn't say it. I said it. I love tools that make it possible for me to work smarter, not harder. And a new one that I've started using that as an investor you might find, especially a newer investor, that you might find really valuable. And it's called Wave Apps. It's really just a software for you to do simplified accounting. WaveApps.com is where you can find it. And the cool thing about Wave is that their accounting software is not for accountants. It's for people like me.
You pointed at me
I
first.
did. He's totally the numbers person, so he could do that stuff. I don't love accounting, so I look for ways to make it less painful. Wave lets you hook up to your bank account, so it pulls stuff in for you, so that cuts down on the time that you have to spend doing data entry, which is huge. Plus, it lets you categorize things in a way that makes sense. Now, you can get some advice from your accountant about what kinds of things you should be tracking as a real estate investor. Anything that you can write off, you want to be tracking, you want to track it in the right category. But once the categories are set up, the rest is a breeze, because it is smart and it pulls everything in as it happens in your bank account. Then all you have to do is open up the app, and you can go in and pick the category. Once you've picked the category for something, it's pretty intuitive, and the next time it's going to guess. And most of the time, it's guessing pretty accurately. After 2 or 3 times of changing things, it's going to remember, and it's going to code it correctly for you. Then it just saves so much time. You just open look at the app and go, oh, look, all of my stuff is in there. And you're done, which is huge.
Yeah. Well, and we're all so busy these days that you've got to have things like this that take the weight off your shoulders as far as your accounting, and you're keeping track
Right.
of numbers and where these numbers go and what do you apply it to and all that kind of stuff. So it just makes sense.
And to make it easy for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Make it easy. Also has a great feature if you do have employees that will let you set up to pay employees. Now, the accounting piece is free. Doesn't cost you anything. Forever free, I think they call it. So it's always free to have the accounting
Free's
piece.
good.
Free's nice, yes, right? That's maximizing our profits, right? Free's good. But if you have employees, you do some of the extra things, then there's a small fee for those things. But completely worth it to have it all in one place. And then I love the free part. I love to just open the app and go, oh, look, all my data is already in there. And I may tweak a few things, but for the most part, it's pretty accurate. And I'm loving that. So at the end of the year, when tax time comes around, which crazy, but we're in the last quarter already. Right?
Right around the corner,
So right
jingle
around
bells.
right, jingle bells. And then the new year will be here, and it'll be time to start gathering our tax information once again for our accountant. And those reports are going to be your friend. If you are still doing everything manually, you are doing it the hard way. You are not working smarter. You are working harder for sure. Anything else you want to talk about before we go? We are just like down to the wire here. Anything last minute?
No, I'm actually just looking forward to getting into some of this stuff
The
in the next
nitty-gritty.
few weeks and being able to share information that, again, you didn't know you didn't know.
Right. So if you have questions and you don't want to wait around for the next show to talk about one of these items, you can shoot an email over to Larry at arcpropertygrp.com, and you can ask Larry, and he's happy to. He's the reserve analyst. He's the project manager. Of course, if it's business, you can send it over to me, but you'll probably be sending over to him anyway. All right, guys, we are going to see you same time next week, same place. We'll tackle one of these big subjects in depth for you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, should be fun.
All right.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us every week. We appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, my friends.
Bye-bye.